Barack Obama and Dick Cheney go head-to-head on national security, and to say that they don't see eye to eye is a massive understatement.
Rather than keeping us safer, the prison at Guantanamo has weakened American national security. It is a rallying cry for our enemies.
The administration has found that it's easy to receive applause in Europe for closing Guantanamo, but it's tricky to come up with an alternative.
The terror plot is uncovered in New York. Welcome. Rarely are such divergent worldviews expressed at such a high level in such close proximity. In the space of a single hour this morning, the current president and the previous vice president engaged in a rhetorical battle royal on a subject that touches the very soul of post-9/11 America, the balance between liberty and security. Barack Obama delivered a passionate attack on Guantanamo Bay and the torture of terror suspects. Dick Cheney, for his part, issued just as strong a defense of his tenure and tactics. Well, Cathy is here to take us through the various arguments. Cathy.
Well, Matt, for the past 2 weeks, former Vice President Dick Cheney has dominated the airwaves with a vigorous argument in favor of the Bush administration's policies on everything from torture to Guantanamo Bay. Today, the current president said enough and took to the podium with his own equally robust attack on those same policies.
Round one in the national security battle, also known as Cheney versus Obama.
The decisions that were made over the last 8 years established an ad hoc legal approach for fighting terrorism that was neither effective nor sustainable.
Exactly 2 minutes later, a few blocks across town, the former vice president gave his defense.
You don't want to call them enemy combatants? Fine, call them what you want, just don't bring them into the United States. Tired of calling it a war? Use any term you prefer. Just remember, it is a serious step to begin unveiling some of the very policies that have kept our people safe since 9/11.
This debate became real today with the announcement that this man, Ahmed Gailani, accused of bombing the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania in 1998, will be the first Guantanamo detainee to face trial in a civilian court on U.S. soil. Would it harm American security if others from the base followed him here?
I think the president will find upon reflection that to bring the worst of the worst terrorists inside the United States would be cause for great danger and regret in the years to come.
Now, let me begin by disposing of one argument as plainly as I can. We are not going to release anyone if it would endanger our national security. Nor will we release detainees within the United States who endanger the American people.
How to keep America safe? It is the most fundamental question facing this country. And yet there is something slightly bizarre and, yes, even theatrical about these two political heavyweights coming together back to back to debate this issue in the courtroom of cable television. It is now up to the American people to weigh the evidence.
What do we say to Cheney? Woo! Woo!
Getting inside Dick Cheney's head is no small feat. But these critics accuse the vice president of seeking to protect his legacy as much as his country. And today, Cheney again insisted he did the right thing, even on that thorny issue of torture.
The interrogations were used on hardened terrorists after other efforts had failed. They were legal, essential, justified, successful, and the right thing to do.
Obama didn't want this fight, but his message today was clear. I'm in charge now.
As Commander-in-Chief, I see the intelligence. I bear the responsibility for keeping this country safe. And I categorically reject the assertion that these are the most effective means of interrogation.
The irony of all this heat is that the actual security policy hasn't changed much from Bush to Obama.
A lot of this is rhetorical. We are still wiretapping, I'm sure, and eavesdropping like crazy. If we get some terrorist who's got a ticking time bomb, I bet you we used enhanced interrogation against him. We haven't ruled, not waterboarding, but we'll put the squeeze on him somehow. And we haven't closed down Guantanamo yet. We haven't figured out how to do it. We still have to find a place for these detainees. We're still going to have military tribunals.
So, is this about national security or national politics? Well, a little of both.
Well, joining Cathy and me now for more on today's security standoff is David Sanger. He's chief correspondent, Washington correspondent for the New York Times, and author of The Inheritance, The World Obama Confronts and the Challenges to American power. Thanks for coming in. Let's start with you, David. A few months ago, in January, we had Dick Cheney momentarily in a wheelchair, looking like it was very much the end of his political career, but the end of his days on the public stage. And here he is back on that stage with a vengeance. What exactly is going on here?
You know, it's a mystery to many of us who covered the Bush White House, and, you know, we never saw Dick Cheney. You never heard from him. You heard the footprints all the time. You heard what you believed he stood for, but rarely would he step out and talk. He never gave us an interview during
He was always in an undisclosed location.
He was, right. And even when he was in a disclosed location, he wasn't talking about it. Now, suddenly, you have a Republican Party that is largely devoid of a single leader. He has stepped into this void both to protect his own legacy, to make statements that President Bush will not, because President Bush has said that he believes that Barack Obama deserves his silence. Those were his words. And then to make an argument for a radically different approach to this, the radically different approach that was the inheritance given to Barack Obama.
And, Cathy, what do you think he wants out of this? Is this mainly to save his own legacy, or does he really think that America is in danger with Barack Obama's policies, and he's trying to shore up that part of public opinion which might feel underrepresented at the moment?
I think there's some of both of that, Matt. Somebody said to me today that Dick Cheney plays chess at 4 different levels. You see the top 2 levels, but it's not always clear what's going on at the bottom 2 levels, and that's the political level, I think, where he's wanting to protect his legacy. It struck me during his speech today that there were elements where there was real disdain for this president, where he came in and immediately said, well, the Senate, we knew he was in the Senate, he spoke for far too long, I was a congressman, I had the 5-minute rule. I mean, there was no bid to make peace with this president. I think some of that is protecting his legacy. But I think he also does really believe that the policies that he was the architect of during the Bush administrations were the right policies for America.
David, would it be fair to say that this is not just a debate about that right balance between liberty and security that we didn't really hear enough of in the campaign, but also that we haven't really heard enough of since 9/11?
Well, we had it
to this extent.
Yeah, we had it in bits and pieces. We had it on individual issues, on Guantanamo Bay, on torture, on the overall interrogation techniques. But we haven't had it about the total framework of a national security policy. And, you know, when Cathy says that this is about 4 levels of chess, she's absolutely right. And what's the 4th level? It may be positioning for that moment. We hope it all doesn't come, but one day it will, when there's another terror attack. Maybe it's in the United States, maybe it's in London, maybe it's someplace else in the world. But it's the moment where the Cheney advocates all say, see, we told you. And it's sort of setting the stage for that.
And that's certainly what Democrats in Washington are saying at the moment. This is Cheney preparing himself for that moment and being able to say, I told you so.
Okay, very briefly, Cathy, do you think Barack Obama would have given this speech today that he gave if he had been in the Oval Office on the morning of 9/11?
I don't think he wanted to give this speech at all. I don't think he wants to have this debate, Matt, about national security. He can see the polls. The one area where there is still some public support for President Bush and his policies is on the area of national security. If he is dragged into this platform and into this issue, it doesn't look good for him. It's not good for him politically. He would rather have not to have to give this speech, but because Cheney was out there so much, he felt he had to defend himself.
Cathy Kate, David Sangam, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
As if to provide a poignant backdrop for the debate, New York found itself the target of another attempted terror attack last night, this one homegrown. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of planting what they thought was a 37-pound bomb in a car outside a synagogue. The FBI closed in as the suspects tried to leave 2 more homemade bombs outside a Jewish community center. Police say that the men also planned to shoot Stinger surface-to-air missiles at military planes at the Air National Guard base in Newburgh. Greg Wood has this report from New York.
The 4 suspects, 3 of them US citizens and believed to be converts to Islam, have been charged with hatching an elaborate plot to bomb civilian targets and shoot down military aircraft with missiles. The authorities said their motivation was a desire to do harm to America because of deaths caused by US operations in Afghanistan. But their every step had been monitored. The principal target of their alleged plot lies in a quiet suburban street. The 4 men were arrested by federal agents shortly after they'd planted what they thought was an explosive device in a car outside this synagogue here in the Bronx, New York City's northernmost borough. In fact, the explosives were dummies supplied by an FBI informant after a surveillance operation lasting nearly a year. The local community is still coming to terms with the shock.
I don't think I felt panicked. I mean, disturbed that these things are going on in our world, but it's not something that we don't expect on some level.
Agents from the Joint Terrorism Task Force kept a detailed log of the suspects' actions over several months, observing them as they allegedly travelled to buy guns, selected locations for attack, and visited a warehouse to acquire missiles and plastic explosives. But the authorities said there'd never been any danger to the public.
No one was at risk. This was a very tightly controlled operation.
Representatives from the American Muslim community condemned what they called false religious justification for violent actions. The federal authorities are investigating whether the men have any contacts with known terrorist groups. Greg Wood, BBC News, New York.